welcome to yet another part of my Outlast critique. Today we're going to be looking at the AI in the game, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is quite possibly the biggest crux of why I have so many issues with this game. Now, there's no lie in saying that this game is predicated on running and surviving. This is encouraged by the fact that you will be able to get involved in many close calls while being able to escape relatively unscathed consistently. But oftentimes you'll feel lucky about it, and that is exactly what I think this game excels at. That is, when everything is working. For example, the AI detects me here by line of sight, and I am narrowly able to correct my mistake of being spotted. The system is working. This sequence ran in a pretty exciting way. In one of my playthroughs, I went as far as activating both buttons and just getting caught as I wanted to slip out of the room before the enemy saw me. I then sprinted to a dead end, but locked a door on him. As he broke through, I went out at the same time, made my way to the lever and then to the button, and left. This felt pretty great, and it was all smooth, it was new, it was exciting. So then, to sort of shift gears, it would seem that the artificial intelligence is sent to get near you wherever you may be, but never immediately catch on to you unless there is a probable cause, as in sight or sound, but there is some sort of drawing force that would seem to bring people together. Not to mention that the AI will often be set up to play goalie with you. I believe there is a protocol inside it that wants it to be between the place you are going and where you are. Since there is only one place to go in most of every scenario in Outlast, in this one there is one fuse left to collect, and there he is, but obviously this could be a spawn thing and it could be completely normal. However, let's get stuck in. The AI is simple as fuck, and it isn't too much trouble to ever deal with. The AI here is so purposeless that he has one job, and that is to hit the player and then move on, but he'll just sit around you if you're in his way, and you'll basically fall inside him because he's not equipped to deal with anything else. You're essentially stopping him from getting back to his script. Now, something that always bothered me in this game is people awkwardly running and moving. It distracts me. Seriously, they run so fucking weirdly, not to mention that moving around enemies is often difficult and annoying when they get caught up in a close space with you. Sometimes I just wish that enemies would back the fuck up or allow you to pass them because it doesn't feel remotely fair to be crushed into a corner. You'll find that there are simply so many awkward enemy interactions, and this happens a lot of the time. Conversely to Amnesia, a game with very manipulatable AI as well, it wasn't dependent on the chasing, just showing the enemy in glimpses and making sure they killed you quickly if they make it very close to you. But Outlast wants enemies to be in full view regularly. It's not just movement, however. The AI behaves incredibly awkwardly when trying to attack you. He can't move as fast as he would like to because there is only a very small amount of space between you and him at any point, so he just shuffles towards you. Not to mention when Chris wants to attack me, he has to awkwardly swing and then wait until his cooldowns come off, and until then he just has to shuffle forwards and get stuck in a hole that he should easily be able to grab me through. We will cover Chris more specifically in a moment. As I played more of the game, it frustrated me that a lot of the time it appeared as though the enemy had owl-like vision, managing to pierce through most if not all blocks to their view. It didn't matter which way they were facing most of the time, but this is also retarded when you find that they do not consistently react to sounds made by the player. Only certain AI do that. The AI will often be left confused whenever you get into a sort of exit sequence, and sometimes when trying to get past them they will fail to hit you. The AI just doesn't go for me sometimes, and then it feels like the enemies will activate randomly, aggro to me when it doesn't feel like they should, and then back to enemies just losing interest in me. And when they're preparing to be in direct contact with you, you can find them wailing about, looking like fucking idiots. Toying with the enemy extensively has shown many strings behind the system in Outlast. Firstly, that they don't continue the chase sequence solely on line of sight. They can have it break based on their pathing. If the enemy clashes with a wall, then it has a moment of resetting, and for that brief moment, it registers that you no longer exist. Secondly, the AI is incapable of dealing with this simple obstacle and will consistently waddle around the area with you until it will clash with a wall and can reset, which is tied to what I said previously. But that's just the enemy. There is also AI in the soundtrack. There will be a basic theme running when you are safe. When the enemy is alerted, they will bump it up, and when you are spotted, they will have this trumpet tune that plays to add to the shock value. These systems will obviously have smoother transitions normally with the enemy, but if you have all of these systems working to change like the flip of a switch every few seconds, then you get a jumbled mess of nonsense in terms of the enemy, the soundtrack, and finally the breathing from your character. I think they wanted to play a handful of breathing sounds whenever you felt unsafe, and by doing so it layers on another set of shit that makes no sense. If you keep in mind everything I've just said, and watch the movement, just see how horribly this comes together. You think it ends there? God no. So while I was testing something to do with the battery power, I had the great idea of walking through the door that the guys burst into at the beginning of the chase sequence. And if you do that and go back through the vent, then you'll be stuck on one side, essentially breaking the game. This is not something they anticipated players to try and do, you know, go off script in any way, shape or form, and there isn't a system in place to account for it. Ultimately, I have always had a sense of confusion with the AI in Outlast. They never seem quite focused in that they know what they're doing. They seem bloody confused. At a push, I managed to get back through the vent, but it looked fucking ridiculous. However, no matter how close the ensuing folks are, they don't seem to do shit all in terms of actually grabbing you. They awkwardly rub up against you and shout randomly, but that's it. You'll always be able to escape as long as you don't take 3 hits total. There is a large amount of space to regularly play with the AI, humiliating it is relatively straightforward. Unfortunately, this invariably applies to the soundtrack as well. But you don't have to force these situations. When you're really paying attention to the AI, it will make mistakes regardless. I somehow lost the guy when I was clearly not even evading him. Usually they will remain chasing you, but this guy lost me the second I moved behind him. Then of course there's the actual scripted fuck-ups where the enemies are meant to behave incredibly strangely, and how they end up just standing in front of a door of a small room. It makes it impossible to hide, and I couldn't just sidestep him. It's just annoying. Character animations are extremely stiff, as I have mentioned. Everyone feels like they are set to do as they do. The guy with the head smack blood splatter, for example, or how people run away and then when you are chased, the AI seem to follow a strict rail through the corridors, and this strictness seems to not be restricted to the animations. It's across the board. Let's not forget that enemies can follow you into rooms where they have hidden a locker, and they will always check the wrong bloody one as if it's written in code. If the player enters a locker out of the sight of the enemy, then the enemy will check the wrong locker. But we can't keep solely talking about the grunt variants. Let's have a look at Chris Walker. Chris's AI is that of a lumbering idiot. Despite the very much convincing moments telling you he is indeed a person, he will not operate as one. He's not a very intelligent man in general, since I made him smash through 2 doors as opposed to him just walking back through the one he already smashed into. Conversely, this would make sense in Amnesia because they are deformed monsters. This is an ex-marine who actually wants to contain the horrors and retains cognitive abilities, yet behaves like a fool. Chris seems to be the only one who reacts to sound effectively. Despite that, Chris cannot chase you through a shimmy wall, thusly making him easy to humiliate. He reacts to louder sounds, dragging him towards you when you jump, which is neat because he has an audio cue recognizing sound, but it's not cool in that if you keep jumping, his AI will continually reset trying to look for you, resulting in him essentially headbanging because for some reason they didn't just make him run off here. Interestingly, the enemies will get in your way during the game to the point of preventing you from escaping certain areas. However, if you're standing in front of a narrow wall, you will snap to and fro the area whether or not there is an enemy present, literally making you phase through them. Walker has no idea what to do with me here, just broken AI in general. It would seem that the AI only really knows how to behave or work the best when you aren't really looking at it or are near it. When you're running away and can't see it, it does its job fantastically since there's nothing it really even needs to do. And then Walker doesn't react here despite me moving very fast near him and making splashing sounds, yet he will react and the music will blare when I'm well out of sight. You can literally sprint past Walker without him realizing, and let's not forego talking about the bumper car aspect of this shit. Just try and get anywhere near enemies in this game that are hostile, and whether or not they are currently swinging at you, you will take damage and be booped. This causes major issues when you're trying to get past enemies that honestly just come across as too fat to be able to get past. It gets to the point where you are essentially playing bumper cars. The AI works as a large block and it can regularly lock doors away from you even if there is a clear view for escape. The enemy bounces you away. It doesn't even feel like they're hitting you. It feels like you got in their proximity and you get booped away by some kind of force field. So how about we move on to Traeger. Traeger for the most part operates in the exact same way as the grunts in the game, but just as similar to the grunts he has a whole bunch of issues. Traeger loses sight of me temporarily because the vision in this game's AI is so goofy, but he immediately gets back on his rails and the poor soundtrack has to embarrass itself once again trying to keep up with the events. You can move through a double door set while an enemy is breaking through one of the doors and just look at them. They have their door smashing animation, return to neutral, and then engage in chasing you. And if you watch it in slow motion, it looks so very stiff. When you find the key to the elevator, they have Traeger run away from you, in order to explain the fact that he can reappear on the lower level to attack you. However, if you do a little bit of fishing, you can actually fish him towards you long enough without letting him lose sight or proximity. You can lead him all the way into the elevator and watch him struggle to hurt you as you put the key in the machine itself. As you complete the cutscene, Traeger is gone, teleported in order to reappear moments later because the script demands it. This is ridiculous. Okay, fuck. How about the twins? Oh god, the twins. So the twins are probably one of the worst examples of an AI in a horror game I've ever come across. In fact, in video games in general. The twins represent a kill wall and you cannot get past them aside from jumping out the window without a serious risk of being insta-killed. The twins themselves are on a very strict rail and will likely not move from it whether or not you alert them with sound or even visuals. These guys are probably the most basic AI in history. They resemble a human, but they are mostly a clunky rectangle that simply reacts to your proximity. Even the twins' pathing can obstruct itself. The twins' AI is fucking pathetic. They always operate on a rail and proximity basis. They don't even react to the idea that you exist. I immediately sidestep them and they have no idea where I am. They don't even seem to acknowledge my existence. What happened to these guys? This is one of the twins and he's on a path again, not really caring that I'm here. I have to walk right up to him myself in order to be killed by him. And the other one just turns up right here for reasons. Once again, maybe these aren't the twins, maybe they're just two other people, and that explains why they don't talk much. But let me be cynical and explain what I think definitely happened here. They created the twins to walk in a straight line and kill you if you reach proximity, because if you have them do that in a corridor from either side, then the player will be screwed aside from jumping out the window. So the AI works for this situation, but repeating it in open areas, that makes no sense at all. It is literally just the developers plopping something they had previously into another room and expecting you to avoid it out of fear, instead of actually reacting to this creature, this cardboard cutout. Oh, and at one point I died, yet the game starts me far forward to the next sequence of events, like the game has a very large and generous acceptance of what counts as passing the current area and creating a new checkpoint. This just comes across as extremely rushed. Well, the whole game comes across as really rushed with an AI like this. When you inspect it with any sense of proximity, Outlast will fuck up monumentally while showing exactly how it works while doing it. Amnesia's models in the game were focused on being unseen and then swift and brutal if seen. Outlast models have to wait after they hit you and awkwardly show you that they are simply sitting there. These AI are badly made. These AI are rushed. They do not account for multiple scenarios, they are simply made to be run away from, and they bloody hope you don't stop to look at them. When stress tested, it starts to fall apart. Outlast AI will be up in your face at all times, and eventually, you're going to start to notice exactly what it actually is. The base game will have you able to take at least 3 hits from most enemies aside from the twins, with a perfectly helpful regenerative health system that ultimately makes the game extremely easy if you know how the AI constantly fuck up. Now, nobody was mentioning the hardest difficulty in their respective reviews. I don't know why, but hey, we're gonna mention it here. Cranking the difficulty from normal to insane does this in total. Enemies such as Traeger and Chris Walker will now kill you in 1 hit. Night vision consumes battery much faster. You will rarely find batteries. You can only carry 2 batteries. You will restart from the beginning if you die. So let's talk about this one by one. Having an instant kill from an enemy that is not only fast but can get the jump on you is fucking annoying and doesn't increase the engagement of a challenge. We're just talking artificial here. In fact, this can be incredibly frustrating. Night vision being consumed faster sounds like a solid idea in terms of trying to further limit and stretch out a player's ability to manage their light, but not so much when you will rarely find batteries anymore. And besides, you can only carry 2. What in the hell was the idea here exactly? Why do this? This is retarded, and I'll explain why in just a moment, but we need to approach this nonsense. You will restart from the beginning if you die. This is such a fucking annoying trope in horror games. You know, if the entire playthrough is on the line, there is nothing scarier, right? The stakes are at their highest. Fuck off. It is the most arbitrary design choice in history to have permadeath in survival horror to try and make it more difficult. If the game was built to support permadeath, like Monstrum, then I wouldn't have an issue, but this is essentially a challenge mode they force upon you. What does it tell you when the difficulty modifier is the same thing as you hitting pause and exit upon death? When the peak of their ability to make something more difficult for the consumers is to simply say, you only get the one try. In a game with such fucky AI and stupid scripting, to force someone to have to nail it throughout is ludicrous. Now, back to the whole batteries thing. You have very limited time to use these bastards, so naturally you'll need to start moving fast. Moving fast and nailing your marks as you approach them. Thus creating a path, a long and learned path for the player in which they need to grab the particular spawn for the battery they know about, in which they have a set guide on how to avoid every single enemy, and which they know exactly where to go at all times. Yet you will be subject to bumper car death, spawns fucking you over, and door fuckery to the point where you'll have to have your life and your playthrough taken away from you at no real fault of your own. And for what? It wasn't a fair and engaging difficulty if it was just a memory test, and a shoddy one at that. I was incredibly disappointed with this difficulty change, and let's not forget the fact that they limit your character to holding 2 fucking batteries as a form of rising difficulty. As if he doesn't have a coat with more pockets, for fuck's sake. The hardest difficulty is entirely counterintuitive. You need to learn how everything works, and how to manipulate the world itself, all the way down to knowing which batteries you'll need to pick up. You'll be forced to get better at everything, all the way up until you manage to find the fastest and safest ways to traverse while picking up the same batteries every time. This will naturally result in you being collected and focused on one strict path, almost like a fucking robot, and you will not be afraid because this pattern is dependent on the game being your bitch. The game needs you to learn it inside out before you can complete this difficulty, which when it comes to being scared is entirely counter to one another. How is the disclaimer beforehand in any way accurate? I found the main game far more scary in that there were far more opportunities for me to suffer at my own mistakes and know that I could try that same test again. In the insane mode, you won't be scared as fuck because there's nothing to be scared of once you treat it all as a series of obstacles that you have an asylum skin on. You're not going to be afraid of these things because they're no longer what they look like anymore. They are all mechanical. You just need to hit the beats at the right time. The construction of the game's difficulty has about as much care in it as the AI, and several other aspects. So how much of Outlast serves a purpose and how much of it is just because they want you to gross out as much as possible? When we have so many forms of entertainment that start with an idea and then create an environment where this idea would be possible, the whole point is to hide how much gratuitous content there is, to hide the reason it's there. That being to gross a player out or to scare them, I guess. Who's to say they go too far? Who's to say they don't go far enough? Well, I'll do it, I guess. Outlast is an experiment into gratuitous content. How far can they push the invisible line? It's not enough that we have the player subject to body horror from every form you could imagine. It's not enough that we have our own fingers chopped off. It's not enough that you throw up after that. We are missing something. Oh yes, necrophilia. That's just what we needed on top of all that. We have this guy who did it call you out for being weird for watching him. I think this game will take plenty of liberties when it comes to gore. It reminds me much of the film Hostel. There's no substance to most of it, and the majority of it just... I mean, look at this body part. How horrifying. While I've always felt it's far stronger to be subtle in this department, to pull it out for a stronger effect. Like, why? Why the random burning feet in a sink? Why? Something like this works far better with someone like Traeger being set up to do these sorts of things. It's so much more effective when it's built and established as opposed to just there. So as I was moving through this game, I found that all of this was just sort of tasteless after a while. That we were being shoved bloody and disgusting imagery without much cause for what kind of content it can bring to the table. In my first instance of seeing it, I was a little bit impressed in that I didn't think the game would go that far, but then it sort of just became extremely iterative, which is bloody disappointing when you think about it. My reactions were once again dashed by the fact that we had seen so much of it at a certain point. Now you should be getting a full picture here. This is at the point now where I've covered essentially every single part of this game, even something as irrelevant as whether or not the violence is gratuitous. But there is something that I haven't covered at all, and that is the Whistleblower DLC, of which is a wonderful piece of content added onto the Outlast game, and next time we're going to delve right into it. With the exact same sequence we had here, literally every topic I've covered will be recovered again with Whistleblower. But I'm not going to have the intros this time because, you know, it's going to be quicker. A lot more quicker. It's going to be having its own little quirks as well. So join me next time as we get a little bit less technical focused and back on with some more of the story, character, and, well, more subjective parts to the discussion. I hope you folks have enjoyed the series, and I will see you next time.